What's up, players? Ryan here from BassMatter, taking you through the core bass instructional video series. This lesson, we're going to talk about bass ergonomics and its anatomy, how to hold it and play it so you're not going to kill yourself, and why you should know what a potentiometer is. Let's get to work. All right, players, let's take a look at the anatomy of our instrument so we can understand it, so if there's a problem, we can fix it, and if we have a symptom, we know what's going on, or we have the opportunity to communicate that to a guitar tech out there to fix things for us. So let's take the bass from top to bottom, and let's start figuring out what things are. So this up here is generally referred to as the headstock, and your tuners and your tuning pegs and your hardware, okay? This is where you adjust the tuning of your instrument on most basses by making the strings tighter or looser, which in turn brings the pitch higher or lower. Now, right up here across the top, we have what's called the nut. Now, the nut is a channel, and as you can look at yours, you'll probably see the strings are sitting in these little tiny grooves pre-cut that are made almost for the perfect dimensions of the strings that you're playing. That's referred to as the nut. It's usually set up by the factory and doesn't require any input from you, but there are exceptions. Sometimes you might have a crack in the nut, or it might be broken and have to be replaced, or it might even be set too high, so you have to make some changes. So that's going to be the nut, okay? Moving on farther down the road here, this whole situation here is just called the neck. Okay, now the neck has three big components to it. First, the back of the neck is going to be either made of wood or made of carbon or something that's going to be whatever the material your instrument's made out of, and that's going to be the bulk of the strength, okay? On top of the fretboard, where these little metal lines are, and these are actually called the frets, and they are spaced at certain intervals, and we'll talk about that later, but they are placed into what's called the fretboard, and the fretboard can be made of a myriad of materials out there: rosewood, or ebony, or maple, or phenolic, however you want to say it. And inside of the neck is what's called a truss rod. Now, a truss rod is a tensioning instrument. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, a standard average 4-string bass with medium gauge strings has about 190 to 240 pounds of pressure pulling on that neck all the time that wants to try to fold the instrument right in half, okay? So that's one of the important things to be able to try to fix and to try to pay attention to, is how much tension you have going on up there. And your truss rod is a metal bar sitting inside of a channel that you adjust either from the top of the neck or else the bottom with some sort of a port. You'll see a hole or even a cover up here that you have to unscrew that gives you access to an Allen key or a bolt or even a Phillips head crank style type screw that adjusts the actual tension on the truss rod. Now your neck, depending on where you live and what kind of climate you're in and what kind of wood or instrument you have, your truss rod will probably need to be adjusted about twice a year, especially in climates where you have cold winters and hot summers, and you have the transition between the two seasons. You'll notice that your neck is going to be sensitive towards humidity and big temperature changes. So try not to leave your instrument in the car during the summer or the winter, because the hot and the cold transitions will allow the instrument to expand and contract and absorb moisture and expel moisture, which allows those strings to continue folding your bass in half. So make sure that you pay attention to that. I don't necessarily not recommend adjusting your own truss rod. You certainly can, but if you're brand new to it, see if you can go to a shop and learn how, because it takes small adjustments, even just a quarter or even an eighth of a turn at a time, and then it takes a few moments, even a couple of days, for the neck to settle in from that one adjustment. And on most basses, if you break the truss rod, you just throw your bass away and go buy a new bass. Of course, I know that's not always true, but for a lot of basses, especially $200 or $300 beginner and intermediate basses, if you break the truss rod, it's not even worth your time to fix it. You just go buy a new bass. All right, moving on. Farther down the fret, farther down the bass here, we've got the rest of this whole body down here. Okay, now these are the pickups, and the pickups have little magnets in there wrapped with copper, and that creates a big electromagnet. And when I play something, oops, I have to turn this all the way up. There we go. It stimulates the magnets and it creates an electrical current, which is interpreted by the electronics down here, and every bass is a little bit different. And some of them run off of active, which means they're running off of a 9-volt battery or some sort of other power, or else passive, which means there's no battery at all in your bass, okay? So a battery-driven bass usually is going to give you a louder volume through what's called a preamp, so it's a pre-amplification of the signal, which means that what's being sent out of the bass to the amp is actually louder in the first place, therefore you have more adjustment, and a preamp allows you to have equalization, even a full parametric EQ where you have bass, mid, and treble, and then high mid and low mid, or something in between. I've seen some pretty elaborate situations out there. So every bass's electronics is a little bit different as far as what the knobs do and how they run off of power. Make sure you check out the manual that came with your bass, or look up online what you have and get a really good idea of what these knobs do, because you should be using them and changing them frequently from one song to the next, or even from one particular piece of a song to another portion of the song. Going into the bridge and going into the chorus, it's not uncommon for you to be able to adjust your tone, which we'll talk about later, often. All right, down here at the end, this is called the bridge. Now, the bridge serves 3 main functions. Function number 1, it's an anchor point for your strings. Whether you want to call it the starting point or the end point doesn't really matter, but the bridge is usually one of the places where the strings will start or finish, and it's being held onto the bass there. I've seen the basses, of course, that have the punch outs here on the back, where the strings go all the way through, and that just creates a better sustain in theory and so on and so forth, but it's all part of the bridge. Now, inside of the bridge, you'll see each string is laying on a little tiny individual piece of metal, and this is true for almost all kinds of bridges out there, from the Fenders to these basses, all sorts of the place. You have those individual little string channels, and those are called saddles. The saddles do 2 things. They go up and down, which takes your action on your fretboard farther away or closer. Action being how close or how far away your string is from the fretboard. Typically something set by the factory, and then you adjust to suit your particular preferences and what's comfortable for you. Lower action is usually what's really popular today, because the slappers get the chance to really get a lot of fun stuff going on with really low action, and with the lower action, you get a lot less energy required out of your left hand to be able to compress the strings to the fretboard to produce a tone. So low action's popular, but it's not necessarily the right way either. It's really a matter of what's comfortable for you. The third and final thing that the bridge does down here is these little saddles not only go up and down this way, they also go up and down or side to side this way, which adjusts the intonation, which is also something that's set by the factory. And the intonation is going to be one of the things that keeps your bass in tune, especially above the 12th fret up here. If these aren't in tune, but you're in tune down here when you play an open string, and we'll talk about tuning soon, then when you make an adjustment here, if it's still out of tune up here, you would fix it through intonation down here, okay? So that's going to be the basics there. Now, what if you have a problem? One of the most popular things is if you have static in any of your little knobs down here, and these are called potentiometers, by the way. And what it is, it's a voltage divider type of device. It's old school analog electronic componentry, where as you turn it, it's making a little metal connection that's basically creating a resistance or opening up a resistance or creating less resistance and allowing voltage to pass through, which brings the volume up or down or the EQ higher or lower, whatever it might be. These are generally referred to as pots. And they're pretty cheap. They're about, $8 to $10 or so, and you can order them online. You can get sealed pots, you can get unsealed pots, and you pop open your cavity on the back of the instrument there, and you have some electronics, and it can be kind of scary for some people. So let's go ahead and talk about ergonomics now, okay? How to play your bass and be comfortable and not be hurting anything, okay? So starting off, we want to make sure that we don't have any drastic bends in our wrists on our left hand or with our right hand, okay? So with our left hand, when we're playing, we want to try to keep our wrists straight and not have any drastic curves, because doing something like this is certainly going to cause carpal tunnel starting over here, and you don't want that to happen. The same is true also with the right hand here, that when you're playing on the strings down here, you typically just need to bring your elbow up to keep that wrist straight. Now, I'm guilty. My arm sags. I let my arm fall down, so I'm guilty of that. I hear you. I know. But also bringing that elbow up will help straighten it out. Now, I'm trying to hurry because I see my batteries dying on my camera, so I need to wrap this bad boy up. But keeping your wrists straight, okay, and not trying to have them bend so you don't have any issues there. And you'll start playing and you'll start slouching over the top of your bass, and you'll find your wrist getting uncomfortable. It'll tell you. So you just have to pop your elbow up and you're good to go from there. I think it was Todd Johnson had this cool thing where you put your arm all the way over the strings and you bring your thumb all the way up until it anchors on top of one of the pickups here, which is our next lesson, by the way, which is a conversation about anchoring and fingerstyle playing. So make sure you check that out as well. You anchor your thumb right up here and you play, and that way your wrist is nice and straight and you're not causing any problems, okay? That covers the basics of ergonomics and anatomy, guys. Make sure you pay attention to your back. Basses can weigh, 9 to 12 pounds, a bit more, a bit less. Nice, good posture, nice straight wrist, keeping things set up. Make sure you stay tuned for our next lesson on fingerstyle playing and how to anchor and where the basics are for there and alternating 1-2, making the most out of your left hand. Don't forget to find us online, find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. Make sure you check us out on Google+. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and this is Ryan from BassMatter signing off. We'll see you guys at the next lesson.